Greetings and welcome to what I think is the 29th episode of Morrowind Modding Interviews. With me today is Luxray, and he's one of the modders working on Skyrim Home of the Nords. And first things first, thanks for agreeing to do this interview.
No worries, thank you for having me.
Now, as always, we're going to start off with a few basic questions. The first of which is, when did you first start playing Morrowind and the Elder Scrolls in general?
Okay, so quite a few years away from now, probably almost nearly 10 years now, I would say. All kind of started in late 2007-ish, when my younger brother came running home from one of his friend's houses with an old disc copy of Morrowind, and he was saying, "Oh, this is the best game ever, you really must play it." And now, as a kid, I was like the one who was really into computers and computer games, so I was a bit surprised that he'd found something that I didn't even know about. So I looked at the box art and thought, "Oh, this looks good, it might actually be quite fun." So obviously I installed it on what was a really old PC for the time. I think it was like a 2004, 2005 PC, so it just about ran the game. I think it was pulling about 20 FPS outdoors. But yeah, once I got it going, it was really fun. I really enjoyed playing it. I would always play as sort of Imperial stealth character, because the voice of the Emperor power, it made the quests really strong. It was a really easy solution to like the disposition challenges. So you cast it on this person you were trying to get information about, and it just really simplified the game. So I would always play as the Imperial. But apart from that, I usually tried to like split myself between all three styles. So I try and do a bit of melee, a bit of stealth, a bit of magic. And I spent a little while playing it on and off, completed the game, played through the expansions mostly. And I really had a good time playing it, but obviously being a kid, I didn't realise for a while that me playing this great game Morrowind, that it actually had a sequel already. So I didn't find out until the next year that Oblivion had actually already been released. And it was only when I found my friend's brother playing Oblivion on the PS3, I was like, "Oh, that game looks good. Oh wait, what do you mean it's a sequel? Oh wow, I should probably like work my way to playing that, since I'd enjoyed the vanilla game so much." And I managed to pick up a cheap second-hand copy of Oblivion, and I ended up playing that on my brother's Xbox when he wasn't using it, and it was good. I really had a good time with that as well. But like you could see where the changes had come from Morrowind, and like the way they consolidated certain skills, it did feel different. Not necessarily worse. I could definitely see it was like slightly different to what I'd already played. So I didn't play it exclusively over Morrowind. It was more like, oh, it's cool, but it's not going to replace Morrowind, because I was still really keen on Morrowind at that point. So I was kind of carried on playing Morrowind after I'd finished Oblivion, and then in the next couple of years the mutterings about Skyrim had begun, and this one I did hear about, because obviously it was being massively hyped up at that point. Oh, Skyrim's going to come out, it's going to be awesome. And I think that was a little bit of a mistake, because all the hype was building up to this being the best game ever, the best sequel to Morrowind and Oblivion you're ever going to play. And then when it did actually come out, I didn't have a computer that could even think about running it. And by the time I did play it, all the hype had like made it into this game that I could never enjoy as much as I could possibly hope to. So I think I played maybe a few hours of it, but I never in any great depth. I watched some videos of it, get more of a feel for how it was, but never actually like finished the main quest on Skyrim, much to my own shame. So whether that's fed into my need to build a better version of Skyrim for Morrowind, I couldn't say, but I've definitely played a lot less Skyrim compared to the other two games in the series.
As well you should, since Morrowind is the best in the series, and, don't even bother with those other two games. Morrowind is where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I just sort of thought of this, and I can't believe this wasn't in our list of pre-approved questions, but if you don't mind, I wanted to ask, what was your first introduction to the Morrowind modding community, and, adding mods to Morrowind and all that?
Yes, it was. I can't remember when I found out that Morrowind had mods. Obviously, it came with the construction set, but like the 14, 15-year-old me who'd played Morrowind never looked at it and thought, oh, there must be a huge community of people online who've made stuff for this game. I think it probably wasn't for like a year or so after I'd first played the game that I found mods actually existed. So obviously, like, I went online, and this was probably like 2008ish. You saw like all the massive amount of mods that people were making at that time, and like you'd just be blown away by all the stuff that was going on. I can't think that I downloaded and enjoyed any particular mods from that time that I particularly enjoyed enough to remember. But I'm pretty sure I downloaded some and could go with them. But I think finding out that you could mod this game and do quite a lot with it, I think that gave me the kickstart to actually start learning how to do modding for myself.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of us, we didn't know about the modding aspect of Morrowind right away. I know for me it took me about a year to find the modding community as well. And wow, 2008, that was actually a really good year for Morrowind. I remember a lot of pretty impressive projects that were being worked on back then, including, I think, Skyrim Home of the Nords.
Yes, a very early version of it, I should think. Quite different to the one you see today.
Oh yes, I would imagine that was nearly a decade ago. Wow, man, 8 has been a really long time.
Yeah, time really flies.
Now, I'm kind of curious, have you ever made or worked on any mods outside of Project Tamriel and the Province mods?
Okay, so once I'd found out that mods were a thing and that you could make them, obviously I was like wide-eyed with the possibility. So I opened up the construction set and started tinkering around with it, and just trying to get to grips with how to do everything, because obviously if you don't know what you're doing and you think, oh, where do I even start? So as a kid, I made some absolutely horrible amateur mods that have never seen release and have been well lost to time. Stuff like gigantic, flat, featureless islands with like massive imperial castles on, and like exact copies of villages that had like all the houses rearranged. I remember one of my main projects trying to learn to mod. If you're familiar with the construction set at all, there's a big list of NPCs, and near the top, one of the NPCs is a character called the A Shady Smuggler, and he's like a placeholder. He's not like anyone you see in game. But kid me was like, oh, I should totally make a story for this guy. So I ended up like making this massive flat island and built like this entire village just for this one guy. And I gave him a little like shop for stolen goods, and gave him some awful ruffian dialogue that you could go and like have him scowl at you for wasting his time of walking about in this very sparsely furnished Nord style hovel. And it wasn't great by anyone's standards, even like beginner standards today. But it was certainly very quaint, and even making it, I learned how to do things. Although once I'd actually decided, I want to start modding properly for a serious project like Project Tamriel, I had to almost relearn half of the stuff I'd half forgotten. Yeah. So so a little bit later, once I knew what I was doing, having made this horrible flat featureless island for the Shady Smuggler, I'd actually improved my skills after that, and I actually made some mods that I would actually use on a regular playthrough. So I once played in like a mainly archer class, and it always annoyed me how you never had any like really powerful arrows. So I made this whole little shop in the deck where you could go in and speak to the store owner and like make your own super powerful arrows to fire at enemies. So I think I spent like 10 hours making this little store mod and writing all the dialogue for this shop owner. And then I think I used it once on the character I was playing and then never touched it again. So whether it was time well spent, I don't know, but it was definitely representative of how modding is. Most of the time you spend so much time working on something, and then compared to how often you use it in games, sometimes it's a big imbalance. But apart from that, apart from like little mods I made whilst I was teaching myself how to actually get to grips with the construction set, I've never actually made anything that I've put out publicly. Like working on mods like Skyrim Home of the Nords, that's the only released thing I've ever been a part of that's actually come out for public release, which is probably a good thing because it's regarded as quite good. So if that's going to be the one thing I contribute to, hopefully everyone enjoys it.
Now, going on to this next question, what draws you to modding video games?
I think it's mostly just how much you can actually do. Like, if you have an idea, you can actually, if you try, you can accomplish most of it for a mod. And it's also good because like you've got a framework to work off. So, in the context of Morrowind as a game, it's like a creative thing you can do, but it's not as scary as like it would be if you were like painting an artwork from scratch. You'd start with like a totally blank canvas. Whenever you're making mods, it's like working off the framework that Morrowind gives you, which is it's a game where you can do what you want. And given that you can do what you want, if you have an idea for a mod, like I want to make a big landmass or a quest or weapons or just something to go and do, going into it like that, you can use it as a goal to work towards, and then the construction set is just the means to the end to do that. And I really enjoy like coming up with an idea for something and then you use the construction set to make it. It feels like by the end of it you've actually accomplished something worthwhile because you've worked towards it and you actually get like something playable at the end, which is a really great feeling.
Oh yeah, that's rather big deal really, because I think a lot of modders eventually go into game development. But it's a lot easier to just start with a mod where you don't have to, build the game engine or anything like that. You can just go right in, build something, and then play it right away. It's, that sort of quick satisfaction of being able to build something without necessarily all the, the background stuff that you'd have to take care of otherwise. Though I'm a little disconcerted that we seem to be losing a lot of people to the Unreal Engine in the community. I've noticed a lot of modders going over to that recently.
I think it's just the tool set that you're given, because I think for its time, the construction set for Morrowind was so powerful and revolutionary almost. You could like change every aspect of the game compared to other games of the era where you might like have to download the modding software off the game website or get it off a disc or something. You already have the tools from Morrowind and you can do pretty much whatever you want. So compared to modern games where like it's so much easier to get started with the tool set, and obviously if there's more interest in modern games with better like tutorials and documentation, I can see why people would be more inclined to go down that route.
Oh yeah, I don't really think there was anything quite like the construction set when it first released. I mean, some people probably find this hard to imagine now, but it was extremely easy to use in the early 2000s, and I think Oblivion and Skyrim might have easier to use construction kits than Morrowind, but Morrowind was pretty revolutionary, honestly.
Yeah, and if it could run on the PC that I first installed Morrowind on, which I'm pretty sure had a large concrete brick at the bottom of it, just to give you an indication of how bad it was, it really must be accessible to everyone these days.
Oh yeah, that is another thing I hadn't even thought about. I've got the construction set on all my computers. I even have it on a 2007 IBM laptop, and it runs fine. And there's really just nothing I don't think can run the construction set these days.
It could probably run on a phone, although I wouldn't really fancy modding on a phone because it would be too much on a tiny screen. I don't think I'd fancy that, but it probably could if you were determined enough to make it work.
I really don't see how that could work. I mean, you need a keyboard and mouse, don't you? Do you just plug a mouse and keyboard into your phone?
I don't know. I'm only imagining that you could make it work. I'm not suggesting anyone seriously try it.
It would be a rather interesting concept, but moving on to this next set of questions here, we're going to do some more general province questions. What exactly is your role on the Project Tamriel team, and which province mods do you work on?
Okay, so I'm primarily an interior maker, working on the Skyrim Home of the Nords project, but I also do various other things as well. I'm also responsible for reviewing other people's interiors, and I also review quests, and I also do a little bit of quest work myself. I've also done a little bit of scripting, which is kind of tied in with the quests, but nothing you'd notice in our latest release file yet. I've also made a very few, one or two interiors for Province Cyrodiil in the past, but considering I've made probably over 40 for Skyrim, that's kind of where all my attention and interest lies. So I work primarily on the Skyrim project, but I have done a little bit for Province Cyrodiil.
Oh, right. You did a lot of the interiors in Karthwasten, I think?
Yes, I kind of half remember what the number. I think it was 25 or 30 of the entire city's interiors, and this was back when the city had like nearly 100 interiors, so I'd done nearly a third of it. But I don't think I could have done much more, because the 25th or 30th I was definitely feeling the strain of having done so many. But it was quite fun to knock them all out so quickly.
Oh yeah, I seem to recall that some of the other members of the team credited you for the reason why the new update for Skyrim Home of the Nords was able to release in a rather decent amount of time, because I think the interiors were what was holding them back a bit.
Yeah, at the time, obviously, this was kind of like in the struggling transition between the 2008 version of Skyrim Home of the Nords, it having been like one-man project but it gradually accepted other people, and it was definitely a case of early Karthwasten was massively more than anyone could possibly achieve ever, so it did later get some cuts and revisions, but yeah, I definitely helped interiorize that city.
Now, how long have you been working on Project Tamriel, and when did you first get interested in signing on with the project?
Okay, so I'd played Morrowind as a kid, and when I was almost grown up, I was moving to London to go to university, and one of the good things about moving into halls of residence for university was that they had really good internet. Like for 2011 standards, it was like 5 years ahead. It was like modern internet, which was really good for the time, especially compared to the horrible like dial-up that we had at my school and at my house. So having this luxury of really internet, I kind of went on a bit of a hobby binge when I first moved into halls. And one of these things was like, oh, that game I really like, it's Morrowind. Maybe I should like go and see what people are doing on the mods these days. Because obviously, like when I was a kid, like I looked up all the great big mod projects, and like back in the day, you had like Tamriel rebuilt, and like they were just working on like, I think when I first looked up the mods, like they were just about managing to get their first map out, which was obviously the Telvanni region. So when I like made another effort to go in and see like where the scene of mods were, like it was quite good because it was an exciting time. You had like Tamriel rebuilt, were getting ready to release their Sacred East map, and they'd released the map 2 beta, which I downloaded and had a look around. I was like, oh, this is really good. They've done an amazing job here. And like that being the highlight, I was like, oh, I wonder if anyone's started making anything else, like any of the other provinces for Tamriel, for Morrowind. So I don't remember where I found the link. I think it was either on the old Bethesda Game Studios forums, or it was on the Tamriel Rebuilt site. But I found a link to the old Skyrim Home of the Nords page, and I went on there, and like it was like really early development screens, and like the current event was they were just making some of the models still, like which I would look at today and think, oh, that's been there like forever. But at the time that I was looking at it, like it was only just being developed. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. I can't believe like there's actually people sort of ambitious enough to be making this whole other province for Morrowind in the construction set. And I was really impressed by the effort that was going into like these custom models, because like there's loads of really different stuff from the Dark Elf aesthetic being made. So like one of the things that caught my attention was Warsas, who was, well, still is one of the modelers for Skyrim Home for Nords. He was making this Red Guard Fort set, and I remember looking at it and thinking, oh, this is like so different to what I'm used to seeing in the construction set. This could be a really interesting project to keep an eye on. But it was a little bit of time before I was ready to actually jump in and start saying, oh, I want to help contribute to this. I was like content to lurk on the forum every day and look at all the new screenshots of what people were doing. And I don't know if you remember, but Scamp, who's one of the exterior guys, he at the time he was working on Tamriel Rebuilt as well as Province Cyrodiil and Skyrim, and he had, well, he still has, but it's not on the same site. He had this absolutely gorgeous photo blog where he would take pictures of his exterior claims.
Oh yes, I remember that. I was following that blog for years, and he just moved to a new one, I think.
Yeah, he's just set up a new one on Tumblr, I think. He lost all the credentials to his old one. But at the time, I was looking at these amazing screenshots he was posting, and because like the old chuntering computer I'd been playing Morrowind on up till then, like it couldn't even touch what I was seeing. I was like, oh my gosh, this looks beautiful. I want to like. Eventually, I saw enough of it, and I was like, oh, I should probably join up with this project and actually like help out with something that looks so amazing. I was like, oh, I really need to be a part of this. So I think it was late 2012 I actually registered an account on the old Skyrim forum, and I like very tentatively introduced myself. I was like, oh, hello, here's my interior showcase, and I was quickly like welcomed, and yeah, ever since then I've just been working on the interiors for Skyrim. So I think by the time this interview goes out, it'll have been my 5th anniversary.
Oh, and that's fairly impressive. Most people tend to disappear after a few years on major projects like this. A lot of people who just sign up are there for maybe a few months, and then you never hear from them again. So 5 years is really quite impressive.
Yeah, it's an achievement. But I wouldn't stop being a part of this project. So I really enjoy it. It's a great hobby to have, and all the rest of the team members are really great company as well. So I've definitely enjoyed it so far.
Oh yeah, and talking a bit more about Skyrim Home of the Lords, what are you working on right now, and what is the current focus of Skyrim Home of the Lords?
Well, there's actually loads going on. Compared to how the mod was when I first joined up, like I joined this project, and apart from seeing all these brilliant screenshots on Gamp's blog, there wasn't a release file. All you could do was like look at these pictures and like maybe get the occasional developer screenshot on the Bethsoft forum, and that was it. So compared to back then, I think it's in a much better place now. I think we had a release in 2012, which was like a little cutout with Calfgad, and I think it was like 50 cells, which was basically like all the release-ready work that had happened before I joined. But if you compare that to how we've spent the last 5 years, we've had a release earlier this year, which is like 4 or 5 times the size, like hundreds of cells, another huge city, loads and loads to do, loads to explore. But even as big as that is, like on the internal side, we've got like a massive exterior file where everything like gets kept, and even in that, there's loads more progress than has been released. So the current focus is to bring that up to something releasable after our release earlier this year. Currently, the exterior claims for the last maybe 24 cells for the Reach have been started. So the Reach exterior, not all of it's been released yet for the public, but I'd say 90% of it has been completed exterior-wise for us internally. So we've just started finishing off the last 10% to have the Reach hold finished completely exterior-wise.
Oh yeah, that sounds pretty exciting, and I remember, I think it was maybe a year or a little longer ago, I was given sort of early access to a lot of that, exterior development of the Reach, and I was just really impressed with how much you guys had actually, finished in terms of exteriors. I think it was like slightly larger than the size of Solstein, or something very comparable to that anyway.
Yeah, I think overall in terms of entire exterior content that has been created, I'm pretty sure it's now bigger than vanilla Morrowind, like the island of Vardenfell. I'm pretty sure we've outstripped it exterior-wise. It's just now a case of getting the interiors, NPCs, and quests done for all of that before we can release it. So whilst the exterior guys are working on finishing off the last little bits for Reach, which is towards the north, interior-wise, we've actually started work on one of the other major settlements of a Reach, which is the settlement of Dragonstar, off to the west of Karthwasten. And that's got some really cool stuff in, like an arena. It's also divided by a massive Imperial wall, because the story behind Dragonstar is that the eastern side has been claimed by the Nords in the War of the Bender Mark, which was 30 years ago, but the western half of the city is still populated by rather unhappy Redguards, who the Nords have taken half of their city from. So there's a massive Imperial wall to keep the two apart, but it's a bit of an unofficial war zone. So started work on the Redguard half of Dragonstar, but once that's done, we'll start work on the Nordic half, and once we've got the interiors done for that, we can start working on the NPCs and quests for that area. We're also working on quests for the Karthwasten release. So obviously we released the file for Skyrim that came out in May, and we started work on the faction quests for Karthwasten. So we've started work on the Thieves Guild and Fighters Guild quest lines for that city, but we're also going to have a few miscellaneous quests for the rest of the city that'll take you out and around the rest of the release area.
Oh yeah, I think there were a few quests in the May release. I think they were mostly miscellaneous quests, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we had 4 or 5 miscellaneous quests, but not so many in Karthwasten itself. But when it came to releasing the file, we thought, we'll release what we have and then start working on the rest of the quests rather than have it sit in development hell and nobody be able to play it. So we're aiming to have probably half a dozen for each of those 6 Thieves Guild quests and 6 Fighters Guild quests, and maybe like 3 or 4 other miscellaneous quests. So we'll be hoping to release that maybe towards the end of the year or maybe early next year, depending how fast we can get that done.
Well, that certainly sounds exciting. Quests, do really help to add in the lasting content people need to stick around a region or city.
Yeah, absolutely, and lots of people do play Morrowind for the quest. I mean, compared to the newer games where I think there's an emphasis on, oh, you go and explore all the dungeons and go and kill loads of bandits in the wilderness. The thing people love about Morrowind and Oblivion, especially, is the great quest writing. And we've got some really good ideas for our quests. And there's a lot of backstory behind Carthwasten that's going to tie into these quests. So we're really hoping it's going to be enjoyable to go down both these quest lines. And they won't be like, oh, you must go fetch 20 bear skins from the wilderness and come back. It's really going to be enjoyable, I think, and hopefully they'll be really fun to play through.
All right, you've got the what is it, like the Prince, the High King, or something, who's currently staying in Carthwasten. I remember Warsaz was talking a bit about that in our interview from last year, and I'm guessing there's going to be a few quests, sort of related to that character.
Yeah, it's the thing about I'll say some spoilers here, so if you don't want to know, like skip ahead to the next question maybe. One of the things about Carthwasten is that because of the general unhappiness with the Nords having seized this town from Hammerfell, there's actually a really well hidden Red Guard resistance, which you can actually discover and visit in our release file if you've played through it enough to find that very well hidden location. But the thing will be that the Red Guard resistance is working with the Thieves Guild, and it's going to come to a point where the Thieves Guild get tired of being pushed around by this resistance, because like the suggestion is they're covering up that they exist, and that they know how to interact with them, so they don't get like arrested and forced to show them where this hidden resistance is. So it's going to come to a point where you have to side with resistance or side with the Thieves Guild, and that's going to affect the outcome of the faction quest line.
Oh, it sounds really exciting. A lot more interesting than some of the vanilla Morrowind quests.
Yeah, Carthwasten is obviously like a massive city, so the potential for putting storylines in there is absolutely massive, and I don't think it'll stop like with these quests we're planning. I think like when we have Dragonstar and Markarth Side completed, there'll definitely be reasons to keep coming back there through quests.
Oh yeah, Dragonstar in particular strikes me as a pretty exciting city. I mean, it's really the only city in Skyrim that was featured in a game after Morrowind, but before Oblivion, with the Elder Scrolls Travel Shadow Key. And you've got a lot of potential conflicts right there with the Nords and Red Guards and the Imperials, all just trying to keep the peace.
Yeah, that's right. And Dragonstar is a special case because obviously the Imperials have seen that the Red Guards and the Nords don't like each other, and they've actually intervened there, which has kind of put a stop all the obvious conflict, but they'll still have like terrorist acts against each other that try and get away from the Imperial notice. There's also the Jarla Yona, who nominally is in charge of Carthwasten, has been banished by the king from Carthwasten because she set siege to it, trying to kill all the Red Guards in Carthwasten, because she really hates Red Guards. So she's sent to Dragonstar so she doesn't burn down the city. And the thinking is because she's in Dragonstar, the Imperial Peace Force will keep her from doing anything too bad. So Dragonstar is going to be interesting because the level of potential conflict is going to be a lot higher, but we haven't yet decided like what form that's going to take compared to Carthwasten's organised resistance.
Oh yeah, and as I recall, there's actually quite a few ruins scattered about the reach from Jarla Yona's little genocidal campaign.
Yeah, all the little cliff-top villages that have been burned down to various degrees have been thoroughly ransacked by Yona's vengeance forces, trying to carry out retribution for the acts of the war previously.
Oh yeah, and I just have to say, I really love this about, Skyrim Home of the Nords and their vision of the province, because there's a lot of exciting lore here that really just wants to make me want to explore the province and see all these little details that you guys have just gotten hidden away everywhere.
Yeah, and that's something we want to try and work on by doing these quests as well, because we have so many like detailed ideas making these areas. Like take these clifftop villages, like oh, we've decided they're going to be burned down by Aliona's campaigning army. But if you're a player and you just walk up there and there's no NPCs or quests to like let you know what's happened, you're just looking at this ruined village and thinking, oh, what's happened here? It's all a bit of a mystery. So we definitely want to use the quests and NPCs coming in these future areas to really hammer home the story. And in Morrowind tradition, like let you ask NPCs like little secrets and little advices to find out what the story behind these regions is.
Oh yes, and I imagine you're going to probably do a few quests relating to the Durini ruins, or at least I hope so anyway, because I did check out those Durini ruins in the latest release, and my gosh, those dungeons are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's like the Durini ruins are interesting because they're the one thing that's like unique to us. I don't think they've actually been done in another mod, and they certainly weren't in Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. They're like a unique concept that we've developed and built models for, and then made actual like properly fleshed out into dungeons you can explore and loot. So you can pick up all the dishware and ancient Durini weapons from the time that the Durini ruled over the Reach as masters of all. And I really like that, and I really like that we've done such a good job on the design and whole aesthetic. It's sort of like the pale cream green aesthetic of the ruins. I really like that it feels ancient and is actually really different to anything you find in vanilla Morrowind. I think it's really fun to explore as a player.
Oh yeah, I mean, it sounds maybe a bit silly comparing them to the Dwemer, but they are sort of, Skyrim Home of the Nords Dwemer. They're this ancient civilization, their ancient ruins are everywhere, and it's just that sort of iconic appeal. I mean, you saw Dwemer ruins in a lot of the promotional art from Morrowind. It was kind of the big draw there, and I think the Durini ruins are kind of, like that for Skyrim Home of the Nords.
Yeah, I would agree. It's not a question I've heard for a while, but in the past people would always say, "Oh, is your version of Skyrim going to have Dwemer ruins?" Because in Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, um, the Dwemer were put into most of Skyrim, uh, even though all the lore previously had not hinted that they would be there. And because the development of started before Skyrim was even announced, like lots of the early choices that had been made, one of them was, oh, the Durini ruins are going to be in the west part of the province. And then when it came that Skyrim had put all these Dwemer ruins into Skyrim instead, I think we had the better, more creative idea rather than using Dwemer again.
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, I love everything about the Durini here. They fit in with lore, they fit in with the existing universe, and the architectural style and design of them is, quite interesting. There's also, I think there's a few puzzles and traps that I noticed when dungeon delving in there, and there's just all these creative little additions.
Yeah, I don't know if it's explained anywhere in game yet, but the whole backstory behind the Durini was that they were masters of enchantment and sort of mysticism. So if you explore the Durini ruins, you see all the ancient powered lights. The sort of backstory is that they're powered by soul gems. So whereas the Dwemer have like all their steam machines and geothermal energies, we've decided that the Durini, like being such powerful sorcerers, have conjured up Daedra and bound them to these soul gems, and then even unto modern times, these souls are still powering all the lights and doors in these ancient Durrani fortresses.
Oh yes, that's exactly the sort of thing I find, so fascinating. These ancient ruins with their still having lights on and everything. Just like the Dwemer, again, drawing that comparison, because you have all this Dwemer steam lights that are still working after who knows how many thousands of years. It really draws you into this ancient civilization.
Yeah, definitely. And like I say, there's been so much created for the Durrani. Like there's whole furniture sets and clutter and weapons and ancient Durrani armor that you can find. Like it's really a big part of the mod, and I think it's unique, and hopefully it's enjoyable to actually see and explore. And we're going to have various other Durrani ruins in the rest of the Reach, as well as to the north, a little bit into Harfenheim hold. And we've got really great plans for a massive, like a beachside ruin, like one where the cliff has fallen away, and then you have like the water coming into these grandiose old halls, and like you get to wade in from the sea and into these massive ruins. And we really like that sort of design for one, and hopefully that'll come to fruition and be enjoyable to see.
Oh yes, the visuals of that sound absolutely amazing. I would love to see that someday.
Yeah, and we've got various other little Durrani ruins made in sort of our work in progress files. There's a great fastness which we've called Anger Tor, which is sort of this massive cliffside keep. It's kind of similar to Mirrelstern, which is the one in the release file. It's just further to the north on one of the other mesas. It's built by Scamp, and it's sort of like this singular central tower, and it's like part of it's crumbling away off the cliff, and it really looks majestic and imposing. And the models that Warsas has worked on for the Durrani set, there's literally dozens of variations, so hopefully we'll manage to use most of them to make some really memorable locations.
Oh yes, it sounds like a really fleshed out set of ruins, and with models and all of that, and arguably I think it's more fleshed out than the Dwemer ruins set to a degree, since they are rather limited in a few aspects.
Yeah, and the great thing as well is that all of the models and meshes are in the Tamriel data package, so if you want to play around with the models and stuff for your own personal use, you can download Tamriel data and start tinkering away and see what you come up with.
Oh yeah, I think that's a thing people forget to often, is that all this stuff really in Skyrim Home of the Nords, Province Cyrodiil, Tamriel built, it's all there in Tamriel data and is perfectly safe to use as a modder's resource to make your own mods. And I kind of wish people would do that a bit more.
Yeah, I understand why, because it's quite a big download, and also you'll have to keep it as a dependency, whereas people might not like to do that maybe. But I think certainly if Tamriel data as it exists now, if that had been around when I first considered looking into these mods, I think if I'd seen that, I would have bidden your hand off to join up with these projects. Like the amount of stuff in there, I don't think you could get bored making up your own stuff. So it's definitely good that there's been a push to release that, and hopefully people have downloaded it and have played around with it.
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of potential in there. I think it's probably the single largest collection of unique architecture and tile sets to be included in just one download. So really, I think people should definitely, check it out a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. Agreed.
And moving on to our next question here, is there a particular as of yet unreleased region or city that you're particularly excited about?
We're currently doing work on Dragonstar, because that's sort of like the natural extension of what's been released so far. It's just a little further westward of the west edge of the wilderness there. But what I'm really looking forward to is starting work on populating Markarth side. So you may have seen pictures or video. of what the city looks like, but it's very different to how it is in Elder Scrolls V. Instead of the Dwemer aesthetic, it's sort of a Nord style. The Nords being masters of woodcraft, like they've made these like expertly crafted wooden houses on top of like these stone basements, and I really like the aesthetic of that city. And above it all, there's the Durrani Elfstone Keep, which is where the King of the Reach lives, and it's like this massive fortress that towers over the rest of the town. And that's on one side, and then on the other side of the city, you've got the Imperial College of the Voice. And I really like the silhouette of the city because you kind of like have these two massive buildings on either side, and as you're walking up to it, it's really impressive to behold. So I'm really looking forward to when we can start populating the buildings, because the city's been fully built exterior wise. It's just a case of getting Dragonstar done before we can move on to that one.
Oh yes, I've seen Markarth a bit. We did some video footage of it based on Rorik's version, and I believe someone else is working on the city now.
Yeah, Rorik was he's finished the city itself, and it's gone on to Berry, who is working on the landscape blending in, because there used to be a massive river on one side of Markarth. Because like the situation is, it's on this massive sort of like hilly island by a massive lake, and there was a river going each side of this island towards the lake, but we've now nixed one of the rivers because it didn't make very much sense, and the work started to like make that into a woodland that blends into the deep forests of Halfenheim, which is to the east. So building wise, the city's fully done, but it's just a case of now making it look a bit more in place following our changes.
Yeah, right. It's the yeah. I was just saying that the Karth River that passes right by Markarth, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, and the Calf River goes all the way from the Sea of Ghosts, past Harfingar, which is the Harfenheim capital, and it goes all the way past Markarth, down past Calfgad towards Calfwaston, where it spawns in that massive waterfall that you might have seen in the release. And one of the ideas we had is that King Fion, who is king of Harfingar, like exploits the fact that he controls the mouth of a river, and we were thinking he might use like a blockade to put political pressure on the King of the Reach when he's not being cooperative, because he's got the power to cut off the trade to the rest of Skyrim.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking about that. That the Karth River is, a pretty natural trade route. It makes sense of all these cities built along it.
Yeah, and there's little what we've put so far is like there's little crossing fjords and little boats along the length of it, and I think there's also some shipwrecks that you can go and have a look at. But yeah, it's definitely a very natural way to ship goods.
Now, going back to Markarth, I believe the city uses a sort of a new tile set, so are you excited to use that?
Yeah, the thing, like, that's one of the great things about working on Skyrim, because the thing is for me, like, as great as Morrowind built it is, lots of it is using stuff that was in vanilla Morrowind, and one of the great pulls for me on this project is that you get to use stuff that's completely different to what you might have seen before. So obviously, like, we've got so many custom models and meshes. It makes actually the process of modding really fun, because you're always finding new stuff to work with and put in your interiors. So yeah, we've made a completely like new interior set to go with these custom exterior buildings, and I think it'll be really fun to get to grips with it.
Oh yes, and you got some really unique buildings in there as well, like the College of the Voice.
Yeah, that's right. The College of the Voice, so it's got a sort of it's so big because the concept is that you've got these like rich nobles training to use the way of the voice for war. So they've got like a wooden I guess you'd call it like a bandstand sort of structure. It's like a big half circle, and the thing is that we imagined that the people, like the students, would shout into it and use it as like a focus for the voice. So as well as being like a big imposing building to show up that it's an imperial institution and is like a big symbol of imperial power, we thought it might actually have like a semi-practical use as well. But as well as being massive on the outside, it's going to be quite extensive on the inside as well, and it's going to have a division of the Imperial Archaeological Society inside, and Rorik has made a little bit of that interior, just proof of concept to see how it came out, and he's got like museum displays of like Durrani artifacts and like bits of first era Nord fortress, and I think that'll be really fun to explore. You'll be able to go and actually find out some of the more hidden history of the Reach in this like iconic building. I think it'd be really interesting to explore.
Hey, that sounds really fantastic. I mean, I've always been a big fan of the Imperial Archaeological Society. In general, I think Tamriel Built has them, though I don't know if they actually have any quests yet for them. But I remember the books, in Vanilla Morrowind that talk a bit about them, and it just really sounds like an exciting potential quest line right there.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about where we are with Skyrim. It's like, even on top of what we've released so far to the public, we've got so much like that we're constantly generating ideas and quests for, and when it eventually gets released, I think there'll be so much to do once we've done everything we want to, and it seems to be a never-ending storyboard for cool ideas and quests.
Oh yes, and just sort of going on to this next question here, what is your favourite aspect of working on a province mod, and do you enjoy working on a team?
I think working on as part of a team is definitely one of the more enjoyable aspects about working as part of this mod. The thing being, even when you're not opening the construction set yourself and doing something, you always get to be part of the community, and you get to see screenshots from everyone else. You get to see cool stuff being made by other people, even stuff that you don't do yourself. So, like I do interiors and I do quests, but Scamp might post a picture of some really cool exterior that he's made, and I'll like go wide-eyed and, oh, that's really cool. Like, what's your plans for this area? And it's really cool being part of that community of like everyone doing their little individual bit, but like it constantly works towards an overall whole, and it's really the team dynamic to be part of that. I really enjoy that.
Oh yes, harkening back to Scamp's blog there with all those fantastic screenshots he had, and also Predator's blog. He had a lot of fantastic screenshots of Anvil when he was working on Province Cyrodiil. I just love stopping by the forums to check out those screenshots in particular, because it's really impressive what you guys have managed to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially like hanging out with all these like modding titans in our like modding Discord. It's kind of surreal to think, oh, I'm part of the same team as the mighty Scamp and the mighty Predator, and it's sort of you wonder if you stand up to that sort of level sometimes. But it having such experienced modders as part of this team, it's always a great source of ideas and feedback for what you're working on. And I think as a team, I think we've really got a good team spirit.
Oh yes, and I think the feedback aspect that you mentioned is probably one of the more important ones of being on a team like this. I remember in last year's interview with Horsaz, he said that one of the most important aspects of working on a team project like Skyrim Home of the Nords is that you have to be open to feedback. Feedback on ideas, feedback on designs. Maybe some people will disagree, maybe some people will want to do things differently, but it's important to, get that feedback out there.
Yeah, that's right, and I think by and large we mostly manage to do that. it's not been a big thing, but like in the past we have, like you say for Predator, one of the like the process for making calf wasting was he was given the claim and then he like worked on it for 3 weeks and nobody said anything, and like by the end of it we had this massive like unworkable 100 and something interior city, and like it was great, don't get me wrong, but like we did feel a bit guilty like discussing later, oh like it's great but we really do have to chop it up a little bit else we're never going to finish it. So that kind of taught us a big lesson about interacting with each other and like really voicing any concerns before they become an issue rather than leaving them and then having to deal with them like a year later.
Oh, yeah, that does sound a lot like Predator. He has a reputation of going big.
Yeah, I remember his Balmora expanded mod that I saw a long time ago that he used to work on, and it was just like, I think it made Balmora like 2 times as big and added like sewers and everything.
Oh, yeah, funnily enough, that mod is actually getting released in the next year, I think. It's been taken over by Envy.
Alright, that's very cool, because I remember seeing all these screenshots of how much he'd done, but then I don't think it was ever released, so I think it would definitely be good to actually have that hard work out and explorable.
Oh, yes, I think he left the community due to health reasons in 2014. He's still on Steam, though.
Alright, yeah, I know not people do come and go from the community, so hopefully he'll come back to us one day and impress us with something he's been working on secretly. Maybe.
Oh, yes, hopefully, and yeah, going on to one of these final questions in this category. Are there any plans for another release for either Skyrim the Nords or Province Cyrodiil later this year?
Yeah, certainly, hopefully. As I say, we've started doing the groundwork for these quests. I was talking maybe 4 days ago with Texifornian in the Discord channel. He's like the master scripter, and we were talking about writing some dialogue for one of the first quest chains for Calf Wasting. So hopefully we'll start collaborating on that in the next couple of weeks or so, and I'm excited to see where that goes. As is the nature of these team projects, like you work on various bits of it, but it's not really until everything is ready to actually make up an overall release file that it generally gets released, which I know was a big issue for lots of people because the space between our previous releases was about 5 years, and everyone was like, oh, it's Skyrim, that dead project that nobody's ever been able to look at because they just never release anything. It's not that we don't like to release things, it's more that we want the first impression from us of an area to be good. And sometimes we feel like if we released just like an exterior piece of content for you to look at, you run around it once, get bored, and then like even if we updated it later, you never go back to it. So we like to feel that like releasing stuff is only really done once it's actually playable.
Oh yes, I think a lot of large projects have been accused over the years of sort of being vaporware because, there's such a long period of time between releases. But at the same time, I imagine it's pretty difficult to get a lot of this stuff, into a playable state where it can be made public. It's a pretty large project, and there's probably a lot of files that have to be, organized and sorted before everything's ready for a release.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a matter of perspective, like to make the release we did in May, like we were talking about releasing for maybe a year before that, and it was only the impending release date of the Morrowind 15-year anniversary that gave us like a date to work for, and that was good in a way because it gave us like an actual deadline to get things out by. But getting everything polished and ready and actually a releasable state from all the stuff that we have ready to not ready to release, but that has been done, like collating it all into something that's able and hopefully mostly bug free, not all of it takes a whole year, but it definitely takes more time than you might imagine. So hopefully we will have a release, as I say, maybe towards the end of this year or early next year with these quests. And I think we're speaking about if Dragonstar and some of the western areas are finished by then, we might release some more of that to go with that. I think for Province Cyrodiil, they're planning a release soonish. I'm not in as strong a position to say. But I know lots of the focus there is going on with just polishing up Anvil. After Predator built a first draft, it's gone under quite a lot of revisions, and it's got to be like finished off and also fully interiorized. So it might be a little time before that is released, but hopefully when it is released, it'll be enjoyable playthrough.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of exciting stuff coming down the pipeline, and I just have to congratulate you guys again on the May 1st release, because that was perfect timing. I mean, having Stirk and Skyrim released on the 15-year anniversary of Morrowind at the same time was just fantastically well-planned promotion.
Yeah, and hopefully if you're listening to this and hopefully you downloaded it and had a run about of what's there. I was really impressed by what we did manage to release. I know people were maybe a bit surprised to see us get a release out then, and like, oh, you're not dead. Oh, excellent. But I think it's like, as playable mods, they're actually well up there, and the amount of stuff that's there even already, and even that we're going to work on additional quests and stuff to add to what's already been released. For example, the Skyrim release, it's got maybe 36 caves in it, as well as the Dureni Ruin and the secret Redguard hideout, and just loads of NPCs to talk to and hopefully find out some of the story about. I feel as a actual release file, it's already got loads to be getting on with and doing, and hopefully it's enough to keep people interested in the project whilst we work hard on the next release.
Oh yes, it seems like every time I load up the new Skyrim Home of the Nords release, I find something that I didn't know was there before. And I've had access to the sort of alpha exterior files for a year longer, practically, than anyone else.
Yeah, one of my personal highlights in the release file, if you head... what direction? If you head southwest of Carth Wasteland towards the waterfall, there's an absolutely spectacular cave there by the foot of the waterfall, which I won't spoil what's in there, but it's got some puzzles, and if you can get to the end of the puzzles, you might find certain references in there to certain aspects of Shadow that super lore nerds might enjoy. But the cave itself is also very spectacular, so if you're looking for something to do in Morrowind, I'd really encourage you to check that one out.
I don't think I knew that. I'll have to add that to the list of things to check out next time.
Yeah, that's not shameless self-promotion. That's Scamp's handiwork for that one. So hopefully you enjoy what he made there.
Oh yeah, I think Scamps made a lot of really fantastic caverns in particular for Skyrim Home of the Nords, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, when I joined Skyrim Home of the Nords in 2012, the caves, like I got access to the internal files, and I opened them up and had an explorer of like what had been done so far, and there were like dozens and dozens of like insanely detailed caves, and I was just like my jaw dropped. I was like, gosh, I've got like a standard to live up to here. So I definitely got a respect for the art of cave making, because compared to the vanilla Morrowind caves, ours have got a lot of rocks and stalactites and stalagmites, and I'll tell you that placing all of those is a lot more time consuming than you might think to look at. I think I've worked on a cave that wasn't huge. It's one of the caves up on the Mesa that's full of rampaging goblins. I think that cave took me maybe 10-15 hours to place all the rocks and stalactites in. So they're definitely a lot of work, but they're also really fun to explore and to look at visually, so definitely worth some of the work that's gone into those.
Oh yeah, the caves in Skyrim of the Nords are a lot more dynamic, especially when compared to Morrowind. I mean, Morrowind, they just had the cavern tile set, and sometimes they didn't even place any rocks. And I think one of the rather unique things to Skyrim of the Nords is that it is just thousands of rocks. I remember looking up in the CS, and some of these cavern interiors, they have thousands of references from all these boulders that are used to design the cavern pathways.
Yeah, that's right. And I think Scamp of a record, one of his cave cells had over 6,000 individual rocks in it. I think the biggest one I did, I wasn't quite that extreme. I think the biggest one I did was just shy of 2,000. I didn't quite have the heart to do any more of that. One of the mods I considered, if I ever did a project that wasn't Skyrim Home of the Nords, it would definitely be looking at the vanilla caves and Morrowind, because lots of them are quite boring. But I can't really reconcile the effort it would take to jazz them up like universally. Like how many caves are in Vardenfell? It must be like close to 100 plus. Like the effort it would take to make them all up to the standard I would like to explore them in, it would just take so much effort compared to working on some new and exciting content for Skyrim that I can't really justify it to myself.
Oh yeah, and as a general rule, I don't know if people realise this, but I think the metric I use anyway is that it takes about one solid development hour to place 100 objects in the CS. And so, to do that, to do thousands of objects, you're talking about tens of development hours right there.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. So, yeah, if you ever want to wonder how long someone has been working on some of these things, you can open it in the construction set and use that as a rough estimate, and you probably won't be far off. I would absolutely hate to estimate how many man hours of work have gone into the province mods over the years. It must be in the tens of thousands at least. It must be some absolutely shockingly high number.
Oh yes, absolutely. And sometimes I don't think people quite appreciate that enough, because it is a massive amount of work. If you were to compare it to a real development studio, you would be talking about probably hundreds of thousands of dollars of development time.
Yeah, it's definitely a labour of love, and maybe a little bit of vision that we keep working on it, but we're definitely having fun. So so long as people are enjoying it, I think we'll keep going on it.
And going to this next segment of questions here, we have some recruitment questions. And for people looking to join up with Skyrim Home of the Nords or Province Cyrodiil, is there anything they should know before signing up with one of the Province teams?
I think the main thing is, even if you're not ready or willing to join up and do loads of work for us and slave away in the construction set, we really just appreciate any interest. So lots of people like to say, oh, that Skyrim mod, they never get anything done, they're dead. There's lots of stuff like in the Discord every day. You'll be able to see like work in progress shots and like speak to us, and chances are we'll be glad to actually speak to you if you like what we're doing. And we've got like a really good community of people who do hang out in the Discord and enjoy what we're doing. So if you're even remotely interested in these projects, Skyrim and Province Cyrodiil, definitely come hang out with us, because you'll get some teasers we don't post anywhere else, and you'll be able to ask us what we're working on, and hopefully we'll be able to send you some interesting tidbits. If you are interested in actually helping in the construction set and do some mod work, there's no duty of pre-knowledge. Like we can get you sorted out with tutorials and like one-on-one help to get to grips with what you're doing. Obviously it helps now that the Tamriel data package is actually in the public, so instead of you working on like things that you might not be interested, chances are we can like pick out an interior that needs doing and like get you to speed actually working with the stuff we do. And chances are, like, if you're interested in using that as a way to learn how to mod Morrowind, then immediately we'll have something from you that we can put to use somewhere.
Right, I believe there was some discussion about using one of the tile sets from Skyrim Home of the Nords instead of what has been historically the standard Halalu tile set for people who want to submit interiors for review in order to join the project.
Yeah, I don't know if it's put people off in the past. I know when I signed up for a project, like, there was a big, if you've followed Tamriel Rebuilt in the past at all, like, they would always have the standards. Oh, you must build us a Hlalu interior, and it must have 200 references, and you must show us you know what you're doing, and use the horrible furniture that doesn't line up properly just to show you know how to work around pointless workarounds. Like, we have the advantage of being a bit, well, I won't say friendlier, but we're a smaller team, so we can, like, we don't have lower standards, but it's a case of we don't need to so much follow pointless rules on getting you acquainted with a showcase cell. Like, the chances are, if you actually want to learn how to make interiors or exteriors, then as long as you work with us towards, like, a standard that we're happy with, you don't need to cross all the T's and dot the I's. Compared to how it's been in the past, we've started working on a more competence-based selection process for modders, rather than a checklist of all the prerequisites you might have expected to have to fill out in the past.
It is a bit, silly to design a Halalu interior of DP furniture for a project like Skyrim Home of the Nords or Province Cyrodiil, where it's, practically useless for anything else, really.
Yeah, that's right, and it suits us more to make sure that you know what you're doing with Skyrim-based or Cyrodiil-based furniture, and, like, the style conventions we follow, which are slightly different to vanilla Morrowind, because especially on the Cyrodiil side of things, they have a lot of the style, lots of the objects represent, like, trade, because obviously Cyrodiil is the mercantile hub of the Empire. They have a really great variety of domestic objects to use. So whereas if you're making a house for Morrowind, it would be weird to see anything that isn't particularly Dunmerish in that interior. For Cyrodiil, there's lots of, like, trade going on, and that's been one of the great benefits of the Tamriel data package as well, because it's unified the assets of both Tamriel Rebuilt and the Skyrim and Cyrodiil projects. So there's now a massive amount of items for us to choose from represent that sort of interprovincial trade for Cyrodiil.
Oh yes, and now for this next question, I think you're in a pretty good position to answer it since you're an interior reviewer. Is there any particular advice that you might have for modders submitting their first showcase, like, common mistakes first-timers often make?
I think most of the mistakes I see with people submitting their showcases is just due to quirks from the construction set, because it's not the newest software in the world, so it has its own particular set of bugs. Like, if you're a long-time modder, you'll know it's a bit weird sometimes. So you'll know, for example, that if you're making a house, lights and clothes and sheets of paper don't snap to the floor perfectly when you press the F key, all for various reasons. But if you've just started thing and this is your first time using the construction set, you won't know these things. And, like, most of the errors I ever see from people who are submitting showcases are just things like that you haven't quite learned that it's unnecessarily awkward from the quirks of the construction set. But once you've got used to how to handle the software, and you know what you're doing mod-wise, that generally coincides with you passing the showcase, because we actually see that you've accounted for how finicky it can be sometimes. But that's not to put anyone listening off working on a showcase. These sorts of annoying errors are easily learned and worked around. The only other thing I would say to people who want to get into modding using a construction set is that the camera in the construction set isn't very honest, and it lies to you a lot about the scale of things compared to the player model. So things that look tiny in the construction set, you'll go and load up the file in game and find that the rock you've just placed is like 3 times the size of your character. So that takes a little bit getting used to, but hopefully that also will get you into the habit of regular testing and like in-game comparison of things you work on. Like one of the hallmarks you can tell someone isn't as experienced of a modder because they'll not have. You can tell when you're reviewing a mod if they've tested it in game or not, because there's loads of flags that you can pick up on. So yeah, my advice would definitely be just get to grips with what you're doing in the construction set and test your mods in game before doing anything else.
Oh yes, and speaking of that skill thing, I think a common thing that a lot of people do is they put an NPC like in the interior cells in order to just figure out what the size is and build around that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I know out of the province modders team, each of us has got a different NPC we use every time. I think mine is the one of the Ashlanders in the top of the NPC list here is like Ashalmu XYZ, because they're near the top and their name starts with A. So that's the one I always use as a comparison.
Oh yeah, and I think the NPC I use personally in references for when I'm building interiors and things is a shady smuggler again. You know, the fellow from the beginning of this interview.
Yeah, that's quite funny. I did consider using him as a regular, but I thought I'll leave them in the past where my amateur efforts ended, because I'm supposed to be a professional nowadays. So I just use what I don't have a previous attachment towards.
Now, for this next question, I'm kind of curious. What particular area do the province teams need modders in the most? Like interior design, exterior design, questing, or asset creation?
I would probably say that the saying "many hands make light work" is definitely true for us, because we've got so many members working on the mod. If you're interested in coming and joining the team, like you can come and work on whatever you like, because something you're working on is something that will need doing, and will definitely help the speed towards the next release. And even if you don't have the skills for all 4 of those categories, like you can come and do interiors or exteriors or quests for us, and chances are if you do one of those things, like you free up one of the rest of us to go and work on something else, for example. Because there's always stuff to do in every category on this mod. Maybe less asset creation at the moment, because we've made so many unique models in the past that we've probably got most of them for the rest of the province. But as for the other 3, whether you're interested in interiors, exteriors, or quests, chances are we could definitely find a use for you, or get you up to speed in learning how to do them.
And, regarding that many hands comment, I think that's especially true with interior design because, you have these large cities that have hundreds of buildings and you need to populate all of them with houses, shops, and taverns and all that, and it's not especially hard to do. I mean, the average house probably takes maybe 1 to 4 development hours to make, as opposed to a dungeon, which might take a dozen to 25 development hours.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And obviously, because we're building a whole province, there's always going to be stuff to do. Like, we have loads of exterior done already that needs interiors made for. But even if you want to come make exteriors for us instead, like, there's lots of brown left on the map of Skyrim, that we could definitely look towards. as for interiors, we are plugging away at them. I'm not sure any of us could knock them out in 4 hours. I think I've done a little house in 2 hours, but that's the fastest one I've ever done. I think my average for building one of the Red God houses at the moment is probably 6 hours for a decently sized one. But the one I'm working on currently, which is the Merchant Captain's Guild Hall in Dragonstar, I spent maybe 12, 13 hours on that, and it's about 50% done. So some people are faster than others, but don't let that put you off if you're interested.
Oh yeah, well, taverns and guild halls especially always take longer than, your common houses.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right about caves. Caves are quite a time sink, and we've had discussions before about, do we put less rocks in the caves to make more of them done more quickly? But I think it's just a matter of personal preference. I think it's going to be. So I'm sure we'll definitely try and make future ones to a standard that some of the ones that have already been done, because they are the style of Skyrim's caves so far is definitely interesting to explore, and we wouldn't want to lessen that.
Oh yes, I imagine, and again, that's the mini hands thing that comes into play there. If you get a lot more interior modders to build some of these city interiors, that frees up some of the more veteran modders to do these overly detailed caverns.
Yeah, I would say if you've never made a cave before, it takes some getting used to. I like, because they're so much more freeform than building a house. You'll arrange your cave shell pieces in the construction set, and then you look at it and you're like, oh, I need to make it look pretty and make it look like a cave. And because it's less orthogonal and it's more freeform, it can be a bit trickier to get everything to line up nicely and not have any gaps in meshes and make it all flow nicely into a coherent whole. But that said, doing caves is an enjoyable challenge, one that I enjoy.
Now, going into these final questions, is there anything else you'd like to talk about with Skyrim Home of the Nords, Province Seattle, or one of the other province mods?
Not too much other than to say we are still here, we're not dead. Plugging away as usual. I was having a conversation with someone on Reddit the other day, and they just made a comment like, oh, your Skyrim project doesn't get enough publicity. And I think that might be true if you're not a regular Morrowind player or someone who follows Morrowind mods. I think if you went up to a random person on the street and said, oh, have you heard of Skyrim Home of the Nords, they would very likely say no. But I think if you play Morrowind, chances are you know about us and Tamriel Rebuilt by now. And I would say that modding in itself, the ethos we take is it's more of a fun hobby than to marathon our way to the end. So even if nobody downloaded our stuff, we would probably all still be here working away on stuff for the next area, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because it's good because it means we've come up with loads of ideas, but it's also bad because not all of those ideas are in the game yet. And like I was saying earlier, with the backstory behind the clifftop villages and Jarl Yona, like, it might be great as a team. We've got all excited about Yona, the Ansei Ender, Scourge, Red Guards, banished to Dragonstar. But if it doesn't really come across well in a video or a screenshot that you've just looked at because you've just seen some shots from the mod, it perhaps doesn't come. The effort we put behind thinking up all the ideas and backstory for what we've done, sometimes it doesn't come across very well in that video or screenshot. So I would definitely say, if you are interested in what we're doing, and like the videos on your channel and like the screenshots we've had done, if they do interest you, or if you've enjoyed playing through the release, like, come check out the forum, come hang out with us in the Discord, because be able to like find out more and hopefully like be even more excited about some of the stuff we're doing.
Oh yes, and for those listening, you'll find links to both the forum and the Project Tamriel Discord server down in the video description below. Now, are there any modders or modding projects outside of Skyrim Home of the Nords and Project Tamriel that you're currently looking forward to?
Well, I don't play Morrowind as a game that much anymore, unfortunately, because all my time goes into making and testing things for Skyrim, funny enough. But I have to say, there are some great mods come out of the community recently. I saw some great screenshots of Ashtar's Doors of Oblivion mod the other day, and that really, for the first time in ages, that made me think, oh, I want to make a new character and go play this, because it looks super well made, and Rorik was telling me that it's completely lore friendly and also really fun to explore all these different realms of Oblivion. So I think that may be on the cards to play very soon.
Oh yes, Doors of Oblivion was our mod of the year last year for 2016. It's simply massive. And also you've got that Morrowind multiplayer mod that came out not so long ago.
Yeah, and that I've toyed around with that. We had a little group session as like part of the mod team. We all loaded up the overall file that has everything we've done in, and we had a sort of team runabout. And we were sort of half joking that we should use TES3MP for like developer sessions, where we could go around and like point out with our characters things that needed changing and what we should work on. So I don't know if we'll be having any developer sessions with TES3MP, but it's definitely an amazing thing even to exist. And one of my personal projects is I really want to find an excuse to use the fact that TES3MP exists and make maybe some sort of like dungeon or cave that you could do alone but would be more fun as a team. So not to go completely like MMO with it, but if say there was like a dungeon where one of you was like traversing a labyrinth and then the other person was like up on a balcony giving you directions, like you could do it by yourself, but it would be more fun to try and solve together. I'd really like to solve some challenge like that. Not for every cave, because obviously Morrowind is a single player game, but I'd like to see if it be done where we come up with a design where you could do it yourself, but if you have more people and you want to explore it in TES3MP, that would be a choice for you and hopefully fun to do.
Oh yeah, there's just a lot of potential there for making mods, more specifically for Morrowind multiplayer. I mean, it's crazy to even think about for a game 15 years old, and we've already, started having a few of those mods get released in the community. I think there was a sort of MMO-style town mod for players to use to get a start. I think it was called Dusk Point, came out a little while ago on the Nexus, and hopefully some more interesting mod ideas like that will be getting released soon.
Yeah, it's under constant development as well, and I know because it interfaces with some scripting language or other, you can like write all your own server-side commands. So even things that you can't do in the regular construction set, like you can set up parameters for people who join your server and like fully kit them out, and even like alternate game modes for like arena in TES3MP. It's like, I think like now is the most exciting time if you're into the more social aspect and the community. It's like the most exciting time you could be playing Morrowind for at least several years.
Oh yes, and in the future we'll be playing Skyrim, Cyrodiil, and the Morrowind mainland, all on multiplayer with potentially who knows how many other players on the same server.
Well, I don't think you'd need to worry about running out of space if that was the case. I remember this was like 2 years ago at this point, I thought, oh, I'll go take some screenshots of some of the unreleased exterior areas we'd done. And I was walking around it just to take these pictures, and by the time I'd gone round the whole thing, it was about an hour and a half later. And you've only made more exteriors since then, so you definitely have space to fit quite a large population, even in the amount of Tamriel that we've made so far.
Oh yes, and there's just a ton of material there for making trailers as well. I think I've got enough video footage stored up for another 2 or 3 trailers, and that's just based off of what you guys released in May.
Oh well, I hope people will look forward to seeing it. And if you haven't played the release already, I really would encourage you to go and do it, because I think you'll enjoy it.
Now, finally, is there anyone in the community or on the Project Tamriel team that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Just a shout out to everyone who hangs out in the Project Tamriel Discord, everyone who's on the team for Skyrim and Cyrodiil. You know who you are. Particular shout out to Warsas, who's off currently working. He started making an independent game, so he's not been doing so much modding recently. He's working on his game, so good luck to him until we see him again.
No, did not know that. That's a bit of an exciting new development there.
Yeah, he's making a sort of real-time strategy game. He's like the chief modeler behind lots of the things you see in the Skyrim and Cyrodiil release files, so he's employing that skill now that lots of models are made to make his own game. And he's posted some work-in-progress shots on the Discord, and it's coming together quite nicely, but I think he works on it quite a lot.
Yeah, well, that'll definitely be exciting to see in the future, and anyway, I guess that's all the questions I have for you, so again, thanks for agreeing to do this interview.
Yeah, no worries, thank you for having me, Dark Elf Guy, and thank you to everyone for listening.